Hello everybody. Let me show you what you missed today. This is day 3 in chapter 5. What I did today is I filled in any questions on the day 2 worksheet. On the next 3 or 4 slides are the answers to those worksheets. You can compare your answers. Make sure if you have any questions you get with me and let's get those straightened out. I would like to quiz next time over worksheet 1 and worksheet 2 over those 5 rules that we've learned so far. I got a little bit of review for you coming your way. We did these, I had the class try these and we went over them, but I'll just go over them on here for you. And then I'll jump right into the lesson. Overall, I feel it's a pretty easy lesson, so just hang with me on that as we go. Like I said, there are the answers to the worksheet day 2 that we had. You can always pause the video and look at them. I'm just going to click through them so that you would have enough time to pause the video if you needed to. But make sure that your numbers match my numbers. Circle any that you don't fully understand, and we can sure look at them and make sure that you're good. And there's the last of them. So look those over. If you have any questions, get in and let me get those straightened out for you. And of course, I filled in any questions, but there's none here on the video. Hey, let me do this real fast. I've got 8 problems here that I'd like to click through with you just to remind you about the rules. The 8 problems here won't take me more than 3.5 minutes. So, for a trip down memory lane, if I got a to the 5th times a to the negative 8, you need to remember that on this rule, we add our exponents. And that's going to yield me a to the negative 3rd. And remember, our next rule, you're not allowed to keep a negative exponent, so we're going to put it in the basement. We're going to put it in the denominator. So that becomes 1 over a cubed. If you have something to a power, remember the rule is a power to the power, you multiply your powers. So this becomes 3 to the 4th, a to the 20th, b to the negative 12th. Well, when I run through this then, 3 to the 4th, if you type that in your calculator, you're going to get 81, a to the 20th. But since I got a b to the negative 12th, I need to place that in the denominator. So there's that rule. Here's my number 3. You need to remember the rule, and we'll use this today. The rule is if it's rational, meaning a fraction, you're going to reduce the coefficients, and you're going to subtract the exponents. So a better name for 25/15, that's going to be 5/3. Notice how I drew my division line. I drew it long because I know there's more coming. Now I've got x to the 4th over x squared, so I'm going to go 4 minus 2 and get x squared, which is positive, so that's on top. 6 minus 9 for the base of y gives me negative 3. So I got y to the negative 3 on bottom, but I need to make that positive. So get rid of that negative sign. And then be careful here. I've got z to the negative 2nd over z to the 5th, so negative 2 minus 5 is negative 7. So I'm going to place that on the bottom. Here's my number 4. I need you to remember that when we're multiplying here, the rule is you add the exponents, multiply the coefficients. So this becomes 6, a to the 5th, b to the 3rd, minus 33, a to the 4th, b squared, plus 9, a squared, b to the 1 plus 4 is 5. Now then stop. There's no like terms there, so you can't simplify those. So we're done. My number 5, I put this one on there to remind you of something. Since we have a negative exponent, whatever I have is going to be in the denominator. So I need to think of this as 1 over 27 to the 2/3. Now you're going to grab your calculator, and you might pause the video and try this. You're going to grab your calculator and go 27 caret 2/3. When you do this, you should get a 9. If you don't get a 9, you need to put the 2/3 in parentheses. And then we're done. Here's my number 6. Whenever we're adding or subtracting polynomials, we got to get like terms. In this case, guys, I'm going to distribute that negative sign. So I got 3x squared plus 5xy minus 11 plus 2xy plus 7x squared minus 12y minus 9. And then go get your like terms. Here's an x squared, here's an x squared. So that's going to yield me 10x squared. Here's an xy, here's an xy. That's going to give me 7xy. Here's a negative 11 and a negative 9. That's going to give me negative 20. I left a little gap here because I see that there's still a 12y that needs used up. So there's my answer. And then stop, because there's no more like terms in there, so you're done with that one. Here's my number 7. I need you to remember the rule. When you're multiplying, you add those exponents. So I'm going to have a to the 5 fraction key 7 plus 2 fraction key 3. You might run that through your calculator. You should get 15 and 14. You should get a to the 29th 21st. And last but not least, if it's a power to a power, I need you to remember that you multiply those powers. So this becomes a to the 5/7 times 3/5, which you could type in your calculator. I just did it in my head. A to the 3/7. So that's just some quick review for you. On to the lesson for the day. Hopefully you got your class notes right in front of you. Follow along with these and you'll find that they're really pretty easy today. So number 1, I got 6x to the 4th y cubed plus 12x cubed y squared minus 18x squared y all over 3xy. Here's what I need to do to simplify this. I need to write this as 6x to the 4th y cubed divided by 3xy. Now I'm going to do the next term. Plus 12 x cubed y squared all over 3xy minus 18x squared y all over 3xy. So I just put this each term over the denominator. Now we're going to quickly simplify this. 6 divided by 3 is 2. X to the 4th over x is x to the 3rd. Y cubed over y is y squared. Now I'm going to move to my next term. Plus 12 divided by 3 is 4. X cubed over x, subtract your exponents and get x squared. Y squared over y is y. 2 minus 1 is 1. Minus 18 divided by 3 is 6. X. The y's cancel out, so right there's my answer. Now what we did in class is I had them do number 2 then, which I got all the faith that you could do number 2, but I'm going to click through it real fast with you. This becomes 20 C4D squared F over 4 CDF minus 16 CDF squared over 4 CDF plus 4 CDF over 4 CDF. Now we're going to go combine each term. So 20 divided by 4 happens to be 5. C to the 4th over C is C to the 3rd. D squared over D is just D to the 1st. The F's cancel out. Now move on to your next term. So minus 4, the C's cancel out, the D's cancel out, so I got an F. And 4 CDF over 4 CDF is 1. So there we got it. So that's all there is to it. Take a peek at number 3 and number 4. I'm only going to do one of them with you for the sake of time on the video. But number 3 and number 4 are the same thing as number 1 and number 2. They're just written differently. Notice this quantity 3xy to the negative 1. Since that's a negative exponent, I can put it in the denominator. So I'm going to get rid of this, but I'm going to put 3xy right there. Now when I go do this, I got 18x squared y over 3xy. And I got 27x cubed y squared z over 3xy. Now let's go simplify. 18 divided by 3 is 6. X squared over x is x. The y's cancel out. Now let me move to the next term. 27 over 3 is 9. X cubed over x is x squared. Y squared over y is y. Z. So there's kind of my first phase of the day. Dividing monomials, dividing a monomial into a polynomial. Now I'm going to lose you for a little bit on number 5, 6, and 7. But hang with me for a second, or more than a second to be truthful. So look at your number 5. Where this comes from is this. Way back in the day, you might be asked to take 3 into 529, and you had to use a process called long division. See if this looks familiar. You had to say 3 goes into 5 one time. And then 1 times 3 is 3. Then you put a line. And then you subtracted. 5 minus 3 is 2. And you brought down the next number, which happens to be a 2. And then you'd say 3 goes into 22 7 times. And then we went 7 times 3 is 21. Subtract them and get a 1. I'm going to bring down this 9. Now 3 goes into 19 6 times. 6 times 3 is 18. So I'll say that I have a remainder of 1. That's the steps that I'm going to do on these polynomials. So hang with me for just a minute and follow along and write this down if you will. Here's what it becomes. I have x minus 5 into x squared plus 3x minus 40. So just follow these steps with me. If you don't fully understand it, that's okay on the next 2 examples. Trust me. So here's what I got going on number 5. I need to ask myself, x times something is x squared, or x squared divided by x is something. Well, that something is a x. Now here's what I do. X times x is x squared. X times negative 5 is negative 5x. Instead of subtracting these, I'm going to change my signs and add, just like we did on one of those problems on the review. So I'm going to make this a negative and this a positive. The reason I'm going to do that, we can add a lot faster than we can subtract. So x squared and negative x squared are out of there. 3x and 5x makes 8x. I'm going to bring down this next number and get negative 40. Here's what I got now. X times something is 8x, or 8x over x is 8. So I need a plus 8 right here. So 8 times x is 8x. 8 times negative 5 is negative 40. When I add these up, I get that's a negative, that's a positive, I get 0. So here's my answer. X plus 8 with the remainder of 0. So there's my answer. Like I said, guys, if I got you a little confused there, that's okay on these examples. You'll see why here in a second. I'm going to do another easy one with you. You know, I think I'm just going to jump to number 7. So jump over to number 7 if you would. And I'll show you what we got going. I'm going to have x plus 2 going into x cubed minus 3x squared minus 7x plus 6. So here's the game I'm going to play. X times something is x to the third. Well, that's an x squared. X squared times x is x to the third. X squared times positive 2 is positive 2x squared. I'm not going to subtract these, I'm going to add them. So I'm going to change that to a negative and that to a negative. So these cancel out. I got negative 3 and negative 2 make negative 5x squared minus 7x. Now we're saying negative 5x times something, negative x times something is negative 5x squared. That something is negative 5x. Negative 5x times x is negative 5x squared. Negative 5x times 2 is negative 10x. Change your signs, add, and get 3x plus 6. Now to bring it home, x times something is 3x. That something is a 3. Now I got to go. 3 times x is 3x. 3 times 2 is positive 6. I'm going to change those signs, add them up, and get a 0. So my answer is x squared minus 5x plus 3. Now, if you fully don't understand this at this moment, that's okay, because what I'd like to do is show you a method called synthetic division. I'm not going to do number 8, but I'm going to tell you this. This method is a hassle. There's a lot of steps. But I got a shortcut. So let me show you this shortcut. It was invented in 1809 by a guy named Paolo Ruffini. But here's what he said. He said, I could do all of this work on one line, so I don't need all these other lines. And when I'm all done, I'm going to get that as my answer. Let me show you what he did. He took x plus 2, the thing we're dividing, and set it equal to 0. Subtracted 2 from both sides, so x equal negative 2. Remember negative 2 for 1 second. Here's what he did. He set that equal to 0. He put a negative 2 out front, and he put a large upside down division sign. He left enough room that he could write 2 lines of numbers. And then he listed the coefficients of what you're dividing into. So the coefficient of the x cubed is a 1. The coefficient of the x squared is a negative 3. The coefficient of the x term is a negative 7. And the coefficient of the last term is just 6. Let me move that back up so I got room to write. Now here's the process. It's the same every time. And once you master this process, it's pretty easy. Here's step 1. Whatever this number is, drop it straight down. And then we do this. We take this number times this number and put it there. So negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. Add those numbers together and get negative 5. Check out that negative 5 right there. And then I'm going to go negative 2 times negative 5 is positive 10. Add those together and get 3. Negative 2 times 3 is negative 6. Add those together and get 0. Well, right now it looks like you just have some numbers. But here's what you do. We started with a 3rd degree. So you go down 1. So you go down to a 2nd degree. This is the coefficient of your squared term. This is the coefficient of your x term. This is your constant. This is your remainder. So here's my answer. 1x squared minus 5x plus 3 with the remainder of 0. Compare that answer to that answer. Look how little work he was able to do. It's just a lot faster. Process called synthetic division. So flip over to your number 9 and number 10. And let me try to get you good with these pretty quick. I really don't have that much more. You might look at your sheet and say, oh boy, there's still 6 problems. Really, we're about 12 minutes away is all. So here's step number 1. Take this and set it equal to 0. And you should get 4. You're going to draw an upside down division sign, and you're going to list the coefficients. Representing the cubed term is a 2. Representing the squared is a negative 13. Representing the x term is a 26. And the constant is negative 24. I'm also going to point this out super fast. You can't have any gaps in here. And here's what I mean by gap. When you look at your main term, it's got to go, whatever number you're starting with, you got to go 3, 2, 1, constant. If you're missing a term, we have to add in a 0. We will do that on number 12. So here goes the process. Drop your number there and get a 2. So just drop it straight down. Then I'm going to go 4 times 2 is 8. Add those numbers together and get negative 5. 4 times negative 5 is negative 20. Add those numbers together and get a 6. 4 times 6 is 24. Add those numbers together and get 0. Now here's my answer. We started off with a 3rd degree. So go down 1. This represents your squared. This represents your x. This represents your constant. This represents your remainder. So here's my answer. 2x squared minus 5x plus 6 with a remainder of 0. Since there is no remainder, you don't have to put that r of 0. If you'd like to, you could pause the video and try number 10. If you don't want to pause the video, here's what it should look like. Set this equal to 0 and get negative 3. List the coefficients, but notice here's a 3rd, 2nd, 1st, constant. So I'm not missing a term. So 2, 3, negative 4, 15. Here goes my process. Drop the 2, and here's the process. Negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. Add them together and get negative 3. Negative 3 times negative 3 is 9. Add them together and get 5. Negative 3 times 5 is negative 15. Add those together and get 0. We started with the cube. Go down 1. This represents the squared, the x, the constant, the remainder. So I've got 2x squared minus 3x plus 5 equal 0. Okay. Now, number 11 is just like it. There's nothing fancy on number 11. But on number 12, 13, and 14 there are. So set that equal to 0 and get a 2. Upside down division sign, I got a 3, a negative 8, an 11, and a negative 14. If you're ahead of me, that's great. Drop your 3, and then go 2 times 3 is 6. Add those numbers together and get negative 2. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. Add those together and get a 7. 2 times 7 is 14. Add those together and get a 0. So once again, I started with a 3rd, so come down 1, squared. So I've got 3x squared minus 2x plus 7, remainder of 0. So hang with me. I've got about 6 more minutes is all. Number 12's got a small twist in it just because there's a 0 or 2 involved. So I'm going to set this equal to 0 and get negative 2. Hey, now look at your numbers. I got a 4, a to the 4th. So I'm starting with a 4th degree. So there's a 4. But notice that there's no cube. It goes from a 4th to a squared. So I need a 0 in there representing the 3rd. And then I got a 2nd. So representing that is a 2, negative 4, and 12. So real fast, this represents the 4th. This represents the power of 3. This represents the 2nd power, the 1st power, and the constant. You got to put a 0 in there if you're missing a term. Otherwise, things won't line up. Once you got the 0 in there, the rest of it should be pretty easy. Drop the 4. Negative 2 times 4 is negative 8. Add them together and get negative 8. Negative 2 times negative 8 is positive 16. Add together and get 18. Negative 2 times 18 is negative 36. Add them together and get negative 40. Negative 2 times negative 40 is 80. Get a remainder, this time of 92. Hey, now when you list your answer, notice that we started with a 4th degree power. So we come down to a 3rd degree. So a cubed, a squared, a constant, remainder. My answer, 4. A cubed minus 8, a squared, plus 18a minus 40, with the remainder of 92. So 13 and 14, if you would like, you could pause the video and see if you could figure out where the zeros go. Because there are a few zeros on some of these. So here goes. Set that equal to 0 and get a 2. When you look at your coefficients, it goes 4, so I need a 6. And then there is a 3, so I need a negative 8. Hey, but notice that there's no squared. I need a 0 to represent the squared. And then a 12 and a negative 14. So when I look at it, 4, 3, I don't have a 2, so I need a 0. I got a 1 and a constant. Once you have your 0 in place, we're ready to roll. Drop your 6. 2 times 6 is 12. Negative 8 plus 12 is 4. 2 times 4 is 8. Add them up and get an 8. 2 times 8 is 16. Add them together and get 28. 2 times 28 is 56. Add those together and get 42. Now the only thing that's left, write your answer. I started with a 4, so this is for my cube. Looks like I'm in a B. This is my cube, my squared, my B, my constant, my remainder. So 6b to the 3rd plus 4b squared plus 8b plus 28c, oops, no c, plus 28 plus 42. Another error. With the remainder of 42. It must be a Friday night about 9 o'clock. So there's that answer. And then I'll do the last one. If you think you have it down, feel free to stop the video and get rolling on your assignment. But number 14 is tricky because of the zeros. There's quite a few of them. There's a 2 that goes out there. When you look at your coefficients, I started with a 5th degree. So there's a 1 for the 5th. Hey, but notice that there's no 4th, so I need a 0. Notice that there's no 3rd, so I need another 0. There is a squared, but there's no y to the 1st, so I need another 0, and then a negative 20. So real fast, represents the 5th, represents the fourth, the third, the squared, the first, the constant. Let me get rid of those and we can do the math now. The synthetic division part's the easy part. Drop the 1. 2 times 1 is 2. Add them up and get a 2. 2 times 2 is 4. Add them up and get a 4. 2 times 4 is 8. Add them up and get a 5. 2 times 5 is 10. Add and get a 10. 2 times 10 is 20. Add them up and get a 0. We started with a 5, so this represents the fourth, the third, the squared, the y, the constant, the remainder. So my answer, y to the fourth, plus 2y cubed, plus 4y squared, plus 5y, plus 10, with the remainder of 0. So guys, there's the lesson on synthetic division. With all this sickness that's been going around, I sure hope you get feeling better. Drink a lot of water, get a lot of rest, and of course do math. It heals all wounds. So good luck with it.